interrupt at any time, ask questions. This is about coaching and parenting winners. That's what this is called. And there are really just going to be two main points. So I'm going to be telling you stories and giving you resources to check out, but we're really making 2 points on how to parent and coach. And that is, first of all, to be positive. And the second one is to teach a process orientation. So let me just kind of go over those again, because that's everything else in this is going to come under those 2 points. Be positive and teach a process orientation. That's what all this is going to come down to. The first slide we're going to talk about is modeling. And I work with so many parents and kids, and on the golf course, as y'all know, a lot of times I get the pleasure of taking a dad out with the kid. And let me say, in a lot of ways, I know y'all might not believe me, like I'm building y'all up, but a lot of y'all are my heroes because y'all are such good parents, really. Y'all do anything for your kids. Coming out here, who wants to be here on a Saturday, right, at 3? So y'all are heroes of mine, and none of us are perfect, and we never will be. So with all that said, you can only take your child as far as you go. And a lot of times, the parents will say, well, I see this in my kid and they're frustrated, and I'll see it in the parent, right? Because you want to keep your job, you don't say, you know where it's getting at, don't you? I learned with coaches, I work with all kinds of over 30 college teams. And early, the first college team I was so excited I worked with, I said, I know what the problem is, coach. You're so negative. But that was the end of that job. So I learned, I watch, but you just don't want to say it. There's another team I work with at Sanford. It was a small kind of team. And I ended up with 5 separate athletes coming in going crazy from the coach. I never told that coach. That coach got fired the next year. But again, I didn't get fired but modeling is important. And so what you see in your kids, it may be being modeled to them. Now, one of the they did a lot of interesting studies on modeling. Modeling is just monkey see, monkey do, what you see you're doing. So like they did 2 really interesting studies in 2010. One of them, they had adults disassemble these boxes or put them together. They actually had them assemble these boxes, and they had them do unnecessary steps. But before they did this, and they let the kids watch them. Before they did this, kids could play with the boxes, and sometimes the kids could do it in an efficient fashion. But then they would let these young kids watch adults put together these boxes with inefficient steps. It'd be like if I want to go get a golf ball out of that basket over there and bring it over here to this, instead of just going around the table straightest way, it's like I decided to do this, like come all the way around here, and then go do this and then go to it. Well, the kids would copy the adults, even if they learned on their own that this is not the most efficient and best way to do it. And animals don't do that. If you give an animal a goal and it watches an idiot do something, unnecessary, and you put a piece of, meat over there and you have a dog, it's like, well, that dog did all this, but I'm just going to go here. Humans are the only ones that do this really detailed modeling, even when it's stupid and bad. Does that make sense? I'm not trying to freak you out. There's just something in the way we're wired. And so you can only take your child as far as you can go. Other studies they did, they wanted parents to model some anxiety. It's just all fake before they took tests versus not in 2010. And the parents who modeled some test anxiety, the kids did. So, like I remember walking with one of my ex-wife's nephews, and his mother was crazy. And we were out in the woods, and he's walking up, and I said, son, what are you doing? He said, I'm making sure a branch doesn't come down and hit me in the head. And I said, that's not going to happen. I said, you're going to trip over a root or something looking up. That's what his mom had taught him. Always look up in the woods so a branch doesn't hit you in the head. Now, about a year later, I worked with this Indian doctor who talked to me about this karma and all this, and this branch had hit him in the head and gave him brain damage and all that. But that's just not a likely scenario. But, if you model looking up in the woods, then your kid's going to start looking up in the woods. So if you're seeing something that in your kid that you know you're modeling, and there was a parent I talked with today about modeling a behavior, fake it. You know, even if you feel, let's say we're playing golf, and you feel negative about bad shots, you feel like screaming about it, don't do it in front of your kid, even if it's going through your head, because they are going to model. And that's why I didn't invite kids to this, because I don't want them pointing their fingers at you all. But in primitive cultures, they don't do a lot of teaching like I'm doing today. This is like lecture, giving you resources. In primitive cultures, they just model. Human beings are really, you need to understand, we're really wired for modeling, so be careful. Be careful what you model. And since we're not perfect, we can always fake it. It's good to point out good models. When I was growing up, my dad was a football coach and a wrestling coach, and he would take me and point out these really great athletes. And I noticed one thing that they all had in common. They worked harder than everybody else. They really worked hard. And a lot of them were leaders. They would really be strong with their teams and give strong positive stuff. And I think that's why I ended up captaining a number of football teams, and just learning to work is how I got to play college football, by watching these kids before me who had worked. And they also worked a lot in football. They worked a lot in the weight room. So I lived in the weight room. Neil pointed out, correct me if I'm wrong, Neil, I think you said it takes 20 hours. The average person who gets a college scholarship in golf spends 20 hours a week. Is that what you told me?
Well, it just depends on the time of their... the average person, when they interview players that have played on the PGA Tour, they ask them what level how many hours they were putting into their particular sport, not necessarily just that sport, but sport sometimes in general, but over the course, and the average hours were X amount at various stages. So it gets ramped up. So usually they're playing multiple sports, 3 sports usually, and then they whittle it down in their early teens to 2 sports, and probably around 15 it becomes golf only. And at that point they're probably doing at least 40 hours a week. But prior to that it's probably, in the 20 to 40 range, and then probably when they're younger it's 20.
That's really fascinating.
So it depends on the time.
Yeah, I think you told them if they wanted a college scholarship, maybe off some of your observations, at this age, sort of our advanced juniors, they usually need about 20 hours.
And the ones that are any good don't have an excuse. They'll figure something out. They won't it's dark. They don't look at it that as a reason. So the ones that are really good will improvise. They'll practice at home, they'll have a net, they'll have something put up in the garage. It doesn't matter if the parents, I'll go in the garage, I'll put a net, I'll put a blanket up and whack the ball in the blanket. Or they'll chip in, or they'll get a putting thing at home or something. So they don't use it as a disadvantage that it's dark at 4 o'clock at night sometimes. It's the mindset of the kid. And it's few and far between, but it's always been the case. Anyone that's any good finds a way around it.
Yeah, well, those are great points, and we love your kids out here in golf, but they did a study of who becomes an elite athlete, and someone like Michael Phelps, one of the key things is they got to sample a wide variety of sports, and then the sport kind of finds them. By this, some of you, your kids have already been found by golf. Some of you, it may be some other sport, and then after a while, like Neil says, they whittle it down. But so if you're not a good model, at least point out the good ones. And you want to get to college, then this is a good model. And then I did say at the bottom of this, respect coaches, and because I've coached before, and sometimes parents are generally respectful to me, but I saw them really go after coaches at times, and sometimes and you don't, and then then they're really teaching that to their kids. So that's just one other thing to think about. Even there's a lot of bad coaches out there. I mean, there are, and even then, the way you handle it, don't model that disrespect in front of your kid.